I'm Alice. I live in England and come from a religious family. We weren't the type of family that only listens to gospel songs or anything, but we went to church every Sunday, prayed, and led a pretty normal life. I made many friends from church and Sunday school, but there was one who was, and still is, my best friend. His name is Tyler, and we've been friends since we learned how to walk. Although we went to different schools, our parents got along and we'd see each other almost every weekend and every day after school. His parents were a lot stricter and a lot more religious than mine, and would hardly let him have any friends unless they fitted in perfectly to what they would class as a good person. In fact, I was one of the only people he was actually allowed to see privately. He could only listen to certain songs, watch certain TV shows, and had a really strict set of rules to live by. The biggest issue his parents had was with homosexuals. Under no circumstances was he allowed any gay friends. And that was the biggest problem. I remember being 8 or 9 years old when we'd sneak into my brother's room to play with his gaming cards, but then I'd catch him looking at a picture of my brother, gazing and becoming lost in his own thoughts. I didn't think much of it at the time, until I began to notice he was flirting with boys more and more. He was extremely feminine and loved to do his nails, talk to girls, and play with makeup. The more I noticed these things, the more I knew he was gay, but I didn't know how to bring it up and talk to him about it. When his parents started to have ideas about what was going on, they were having none of it. One day, he was caught putting on his mother's makeup. The next day, I saw him with a bruise on his wrist. He explained that his father grabbed him so hard that the ring he was wearing began digging into his arm, leaving him with a bruise. Things only got worse from here on. Fast forward a few years, and we're both 15 years old. We were just talking on his bed when his parents came crashing into his room, his dad with a belt in his hand, and his mother holding a computer. I look up, first to see the anger in his dad's face, and then to the screen. On the screen was a picture of him and a boy holding hands on a bed. I could see the fear in Tyler's face. He was trying to convince them it wasn't gay, it was just a friend. I knew that if I did nothing right then, things would get much worse. I took a large gulp and said, "He's not gay. He's my boyfriend." Tyler and his parents both looked equally as shocked. Tyler's father then said, "Well, if he is, then why don't you prove it?" I paused for a minute, looked deeply into his eyes, and then locked lips with him. It probably lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I could hear nothing apart from my heart beating and my own thoughts racing through my head. Was I doing the right thing? How was he going to react? For all I knew, he could have pushed me away, and then things could have gotten real bad. For both of us. As soon as it was over, I looked into Tyler's eyes, and straight away, I knew I'd done the right thing. We both looked to his parents, who were already retreating backwards in shock. His father still staring Tyler down as he backed out of the room. As the door clicked shut, Tyler turned to me, gave me a massive hug, and began to cry. He was so grateful, but at the same time, he was scared of what would happen if his parents ever found out the truth. He said to me, "If my parents knew I was gay, they'd disown me, leave me on the streets." The whole next week, Tyler's words haunted me. I knew how strict his parents were, and I understood their beliefs. But I was also sure they loved him, and I was sure they wouldn't see him left on the streets. I had to speak with him, but I didn't want to do it at his house, where it would have been awkward for everyone. That weekend, I met Tyler in the park, and he looked at me, embarrassed and shy, and once again said to me, "I've known for years, but I didn't know how to tell you." He sat and poured his heart out to me, and I just listened and gave him occasional reassurance. The longer he spoke to me, the more I could see the weight being lifted from his shoulders. The conversation went from being a dark, upsetting one to a friendly chat about feelings that should have happened years ago, and I wish it had. I could see the pressure he had been carrying all on his own when he really just needed someone to talk to and a friendly shoulder to cry on. Tyler knew this was going to be a long road, but getting all of that off his chest to me gave him massive confidence, and for the first time in his life, he could see how things might not actually be that bad after all. Tyler has since come out to his friends and family, and although his parents didn't agree with his choice, they did accept it and still love him for who he is. Not only that, but he had full support from all of his friends, so every time he couldn't turn to his parents for advice and understanding, his friends were never far away. As for me, well, I'm happy I was there for my best friend in his darkest hour, when he most needed someone to be there for him, and I look forward to many more great years of our friendship.
Story time about how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Growing up, I didn't have a really good relationship with my parents or with my brother. The only person that I did get along with was my sister. You see, we're kind of a religious family. When I was 15, I knew that I liked girls, but there was no way that I would tell my parents that I did. They would never accept that their daughter liked other girls. I basically suppressed all of those feelings for about 5 years. When I turned 20, I decided to come out to my sister. My sister was super open, accepting, and she was really loving about it. She never once made me feel bad. I asked her what she thought about me telling the rest of the family, and she said definitely not. She knew that our parents would freak. I finally got my first girlfriend a year after that. I actually met her on my 21st birthday. At this point, I still live with my parents, so I basically said that she was a best friend of mine. My parents, of course, believed me because they had no other reason not to. She would come over to my house, and we would just spend time together there. She eventually got really upset that I would never tell my parents about us, and she decided to break up with me because of it. Of course, I was brokenhearted about it, but 3 weeks later, I met my brother's now girlfriend. Right off the bat, we got along really well. Like I said before, I never had a really good relationship with my brother. He suspected that I liked girls, but he never came out and told me. But because of this, there was always tension between us. Also, I never understood why his girlfriend liked him because he has no personality and zero sense of humor, which is honestly why I think her and I got along so well. Anytime she came over to our house, I would just find her so funny. My brother had to go out of town for work, so she invited me to go out with her friends for lunch. Of course, I quickly accepted. I honestly didn't realize it at the time, but I was definitely developing a crush on her. She was my kind of girl. I mean, I guess my brother and I have the same type. She was funny and incredibly smart. After that lunch, she asked me if I wanted to hang out another 2 times when my brother was away. Everything was going pretty well, but after the 3rd time that we hung out, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I knew this was going to be a really big problem for me. I'm the kind of person that's always honest with people as much as I can. When my brother finally came back, she started coming over to the house more. I was both excited but worried at the same time because I knew that I had feelings for her. One day she came over, but there was nobody home. That's when I decided to be honest with her and tell her the truth. I opened up to her and told her my history and that I had a crush on her. She smiled and told me that it was okay. That's when she grabbed my hand and we started kissing. Trust me, I know that it's totally wrong because she's my brother's girlfriend, but I was falling in love with her. That's when my brother comes in and sees us making out. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when my brother comes in and catches me making out with his girlfriend. He instantly went berserk and started punching a hole through a wall. His girlfriend tried to calm him down, but he told her that if she touched him, he would probably end up hitting her. Luckily, no one else in the house was home, but my brother threatened to tell my parents. Like I said in part 1, my parents are very religious, and I knew that they would never accept me as I am. That's when my brother said that he had already been suspecting of me and his girlfriend because her and I had been hanging out so much. He then started calling me a bunch of names like freak and other really inappropriate things. Then the fight became about him and his girlfriend. His girlfriend started telling him that she had been miserable the whole time that she was with him and that he had been manipulating her the whole time. She told him he was even toxic, which I can believe because my brother's kind of like that. She then left the house and told him that she never wanted to see him again. My brother started asking me a bunch of questions like how long I had been seeing her. I told him that this was the first time her and I had ever kissed. Then he told me that I needed a man to teach me how to be a woman. So instead of staying and arguing with him, I decided to leave. I decided to go ahead and tell my parents the truth before my brother did. I was absolutely petrified. I told my parents that I like girls, and I told them what had happened with my brother's girlfriend. That's when my dad told me that they weren't upset that I like girls, and that they would have accepted me either way. But they were really upset that I had hurt my brother's feelings, and that I caused them to break up. They were surprisingly okay with what I had told them. I mean, after years of being petrified of them knowing the truth, I felt so free. But I also told them that my brother had been toxic towards her and that's why she didn't want to be with him anymore. My parents actually ended up being more angry with my brother than with me. But you'll never guess, a few months later my brother told my parents that he's bi. I haven't contacted my brother's ex, but I really feel like I should. I mean, I was falling in love with her. What do you guys think I should do?
Here's a story time of how me and my sisters almost got kidnapped. So my mom and her boyfriend were just going to go out and have a night to themselves, and I was home watching my 2 little sisters. At the time, I was 13, my 2 little sisters were 9 and 6. So around 6 p.m., my mom and her boyfriend leave. Me and my sisters just sit down and watch a movie, and then I get up to make them dinner. I get paranoid really easily, and while I was making them dinner, I look out the kitchen window, and I thought I seen somebody in the backyard. I text my mom and she gets on the cameras that are outside and she said nobody was out there. I continue making them dinner, we sit down and eat, and then we start watching another movie. Then we start hearing knocking. It wasn't coming from any of the doors, it was coming from the side of the house. I didn't want to bother my mom on her one night out, so I just took the kids and we went upstairs and watched a movie in my room. My 6-year-old sister at the time went to the bathroom and she came back in literal tears. She was literally crying so hard until I finally got her to stop and tell me what was wrong. She said as she was walking back from the bathroom, she seen somebody downstairs. I quietly locked my door and I put my sisters in the closet and I called my mom right away. I called my mom and then she looked on the cameras downstairs and somebody was in the house. She never told me what the person was doing. I guess she just didn't want me worrying, but she called 911 right away. While my 2 little sisters were in the closet, my 6-year-old sister would not stop crying and I'm pretty sure the person downstairs heard her. At this time, my mom and her boyfriend were already on the way and so were the police. I heard him coming up the steps, so I quietly opened the closet door and promised my sisters that they would stay quiet and be calm no matter what. I didn't know what he was here for, so I hid in the side of the bed in front of the closet so that he would get to me before he got to the girls. I heard him just rummaging through stuff and stuff breaking. Then a couple minutes later, I hear the police sirens. Right as I hear the police sirens, I hear a bedroom window smash. While trying to stay as calm as I can, 3 policemen bust down the door. They grab me and my sisters and take us outside. About 5 minutes after they take us outside and put us in the back of their car, my mom and her boyfriend shows up. About 20 minutes later after he was caught, they did notify us that he was wanted for murder of 2 younger girls and 1 adult male. About $10,000 of our stuff was either missing or broke.